Sloppy Spoilers with your host, DT2. What's up, y'all? DT2 Comics Chat here. We are back. B-A-C-K back. I know you haven't heard from Sloppy Spoilers in a while, but we're back tonight, and we're going to talk about, drum roll please, the Marvels. I know y'all didn't see that coming, okay? But it's going to be very interesting because there's a lot that's riding on this, a lot more than people might think, okay? Because this bit of content is really going to be the end of the beginning or the beginning of the end. I'll explain that in a minute. Let me bring on my co-host. Welcome to David Nemesis Howard.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Sloppy Spoilers. I am here. I am ready. And I am clear, I guess. Or I'm in my beer or something. I don't know. Something rhymes with that. So here I am. So
Welcome to Steve Shapewing Sellers.
I think the Looks Clear is the other podcast then.
Yeah.
As for the Marvels, my quick summation is it looks stupid. Don't see it. Our work is done. Goodbye.
Right. Have a good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Welcome to Jeff, Mr. Happy Brace.
Well, Fernando would like to say, DT, that you are marvelous.
Oh my goodness.
That's an old joke out there, folks. So some old SNL Billy Crystal stuff.
Yeah, it's so old. It's got Moses' cell phone. Okay, anyway, so
that's a good one.
We're gonna talk about everything having to do with the Marvels. We're going to talk about Iman Vellani as Kamala Khan. We're going to talk about Carol Danvers. We're going to talk about the end of WandaVision. We're going to talk about this movie that Marvel seems to have forgotten to promote. And we're going to talk about what's going on with Kamala Khan in the comics. And all of these things are more significant than you might realize because this is, how can I put it? This is the biggest beacon in the sea of comicdom to tell us that Marvel still don't get it. They don't want to get it. They ain't gonna never get it. And it's time for indies to rise. If you don't understand from all this by now that the comic scene that you love from the big two is dead.
See, you should have told me. You should have told me you're going to say that, so I could have queued up. Never gonna get it. Never gonna get it. Never gonna get it. Never gonna get it. Never gonna get it.
Never gonna get it. You don't get it after this one. And I want to say this. We're going to actually look at the first teaser trailer for the Marvels movie. But I want to say this before we pull that up. For those of you that follow me on my channels, you know that I'm reviewing Secret Invasion. And Secret Invasion is a bit of a slept-on show. I think it suffers from the same expectations as Terminator Sarah Connor Chronicles. Sarah Connor Chronicles is one of my top favorite shows of all time. It was so good, it hurt. It was must-see TV, and we couldn't stand it when it got canceled. But I think...
Especially in a doggone cliffhanger like that.
Heavy cliffhanger. But I think people were expecting Schwarzenegger and Hamilton. And I think that was a lot of the weight against the show because it wasn't that, but it was good for what it was.
Well, if that was going to happen on TV.
yeah. So I can make that same statement to a certain degree. Secret Invasion is not that good, that level, but for what it is, it's good. And the reason I decided to review it is because I'm not sure if we're ever going to get any more Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. This might be the last hurrah. Now, he said he's willing to come back or whatever, but you never know. These movies are announced, and sometimes they don't come to pass, and sometimes they never come out. And this is also the most time we've got to spend with Nick Fury individually. So I'm going to see if it sticks to landing because the finale is going to be out tomorrow. It's just 6 episodes.
You know, it'd be funny, like if with the multiverse active now, we could always bring Hasselhoff back as Nick Fury.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
No, that will never happen, but yeah.
But the reason I wanted to share that in front of my buds here is because Secret Invasion is trying to be the Andor of Marvel. So if you remember when we reviewed Andor, it was really slow and it was really dragging and a whole bunch of stuff we didn't get. And then it kind of justifies everything in the last 4 episodes. And it really had a nice paced conclusion. And we all enjoyed it for what it was, which was Star Wars Lower Decks. So this Secret Invasion could have been Avengers Lower Decks. It's more like the return of Nick Fury. So I definitely want you to check it out. But that's relevant as we go into this because the whole premise of Secret Invasion is y'all said y'all was going to give us a planet, and we got Bupkis. So now the Skrulls are mad. So I'm still trying to figure out where is Carol Danvers in all this? And maybe this movie will answer that question, although I doubt it. So let's check out that first trailer, Nims, if you don't mind.
Here we go.
Captain Rambo?
What the hell are you doing?
Entering the jump point perimeter.
I'm gonna get you some readings, Fury. Hello?
Monica!
Hello?
Captain Rambo?
Is this an Avengers test?
Where's Captain Rambo?
What the? Hi.
We're looking for Kamala Khan.
Okay, so our powers are entangled. I can manipulate light energy. And you,
I could totally show you. I'm not again.
hi,
Where's our daughter?
wherever you were.
Shields up!
We're a team.
No, we're not a team.
We're not a team.
Okay, now my first question is, did you care about anybody in that trailer?
Nope.
I like the Beastie Boys. So
Steve.
They are the standout. No, I don't care about anybody. I mean, the only person you might care about is Nick Fury, but you don't care about him here. You certainly don't care about Kamala Khan. You don't care about Monica Rambeau. And you certainly don't care about Captain Marvel. So, yeah.
the cat was giving me some serious Tahulu vibes, so I like that.
I'm so tired of that octopus mouth cat. I don't know what to do. I'm like, burn it with fire. Bracy, did you care about anybody in that trailer?
Surprisingly, I found Kamala Khan engaging.
I think
Okay.
Iman Vellani is because most of the time it feels like to me she's playing herself because she's a hardcore fangirl. So it feels a lot like what I said on Twitter a few minutes ago about Ryan Reynolds. The Green Lantern movie was What If Ryan Reynolds Got a Power Ring? That wasn't really Hal Jordan.
Now,
Sorry.
we all know Kamala Khan is loosely based on the idea of Spider-Man, the teenage superhero who becomes the fish out of water. She's not that nerdy kid in the way that Spider-Man was, but she's got her own things that set her apart from the regular school, which is like her very, very Muslim family. And in the first couple of arcs of the story, the first couple of trades are actually pretty good. I enjoyed them before they completely go off the rails and kind of get rid of the Spider-Man formula. And I feel like I'm getting that here. I feel a little bit like the Tom Holland when he gets to be with the Avengers. He's like all excited and geeking out about it. So I'm getting a little bit of that, Spider-Man nostalgia in there. And the little gal who plays her, she's so sincere and genuine, not just in person, but in her acting. Even though I didn't think the Miss Marvel show was very good because it was written to basically give her no consequences. I do like her in this context because she is the odd man out, and she's playing that very well. I think I love her freaking out when the Flurkin just eats a couple of dudes. I was like, that's such a genuine reaction, and I kind of like her. Like, oh my gosh. The only thing that like gave me real pause there is like, how does she know who Nick Fury is?
Well,
I mean, seriously, how does she know who Nick Fury is?
You're not supposed to, right?
Yeah.
right.
I mean, I will say that what the saving grace with that character is Iman Vellani, and that's because she sincerely cares about the character.
Yeah.
And not only that, she actually cares about Marvel Comics enough so that she's willing to debate Kevin Feige over the comic book accuracy of the films.
I mean,
so I respect her for that.
Yeah, if Brie Larson was like this, maybe we would like Captain Marvel a lot more.
Okay, but my question is, what's the hook?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is
What's
that
the hook?
watching this? Well, first off, with the character, the actress who plays Miss Marvel, she just comes off too young for me. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm jaded, cynical, and old.
Do you mean immature?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one. Two is that we have a whole trailer that was what, 2 minutes, something like that, 2.5 minutes. All I got was Freaky Friday. That's all I got out of the movie. I don't know what the movie's about. I mean, we saw some randos walking around and they were fighting them, and we saw somebody holding.
Yeah, we don't know what the threat is. We don't know who the villain is. We don't know any of that stuff. Like you said, they're just doing the Freaky Friday. Like, oh, won't this be whimsical and funny and kind of goofy?
Yeah, and
It's basically, let's throw these girls together and into a team and see what happens. Yeah, because that works so well for A-Force.
And we saw a woman holding a one of those Kree hammers. I can't remember exactly what is he.
She's either going to be an accuser or a pursuer.
Yeah, an accuser.
Probably, yeah.
You know, an accuser hammer, but she doesn't look Kree. You know, she doesn't have the blue skin. I don't know what's going on there. But
some Kree, the Kree do come in two shades, blue and white.
Right, but either way, I have no idea what's going on in this movie other than for the 27,000th time, Hollywood is doing a Freaky Friday remake, which will never be as good as the original. So, you know.
I mean, doing a little bit of the work of the movie, I mean, my guess is that their whole entanglement thing is basically kind of like the nega bands between Rick Jones and Captain Marvel, only
that's
it's
precisely
between
what
these
it is.
three. But it's just like, do we care? No, because we're not invested in any of them.
That's the nostalgia bait for us comic book heads.
Well,
I was thinking
that's a deep cut. You know, nobody would know that except longtime comic book fans.
See, I was thinking they were going to go. I was thinking they were going to go full physics-based mode and say that they are quantum entanglement because of quantum mania. You know,
well, that's kind of what I take it to mean. You know, because they have broached in like Thor 2 the idea of quantum entanglement before with the Soul Forge, and we know about the quantum mania. So I'm sure that's what they mean when they're saying entanglement.
Okay, but what the vibe I'm getting is Harley and Ivy as Selena, Marvel style. So it feels like it's going to be just like another wacky adventure, you know. And like I said, so to answer my own question, I think the hook is supposed to be Nick Fury. I think we're supposed to care that he's back in it. And I think because Nick Fury is the only one that can actually move the needle in the MCU. And I think a lot of people don't realize that because it started with him. The MCU, as we understand it, started with him, started with his idea, and he repeats that mantra in these trailers, wherever. And that's what I think I think that's what they're going for to try to hook people in. But I'm like, you can't use that nostalgia bait and you can't use those feelings because what comes up with that is Cap and Thor and Hulk and Iron Man and Widow and Hawkeye, none of these characters that you're trying to attach to that mantra. When Nick Fury said he had an idea, then you retconned it to say he named the Avengers because of Captain Marvel. That still doesn't make us care about these three.
Yeah, and like we don't get enough of him in the trailer to make him feel like the focus or the one who's going to move the plot. You know, because you've got so many characters you've got to introduce. You know, people who might not have seen the Disney Plus shows. So you got to have a big info dump in 2 minutes.
Marketing ploy.
Well,
there's a very Marvel cracking jokes every time something happens.
Well, for me, it's like this.
It's basically you have these three characters that really don't move the needle at all, and Disney knows it. So let's bring in this recognizable character from the Avengers, you know, in the hopes that it'll attract more interest because these three can't cut it on their own.
Well,
I
for
will
me,
also-
this is completely aimed at children.
I will also say this with the Kamala Khan character is that, I mean, at the risk of offending those of us here who are huge Fantastic Four fans,
Mhm.
I prefer my Kamala Khan to be comics accurate. In other words, I want
Yeah.
her to be Mr. Fantastic clone. You know, it's like either
And instead
do
of
it
Green
right.
Lantern wannabe.
Yeah, it's like either do it right or just don't do it. It's one or the other for me.
Well,
so,
Iman Vellani does not look like Kamala Khan from the comics. I got a picture behind me that'll
Yeah.
prove
And then
that.
they changed her powers, which, you know, even the people that are hardcore into that character, you know, didn't like.
Well, I think they realize, like, you know, stretchy powers are hard to pull off in CGI, even now. But one of the big criticisms of that particular character is that it looks really goofy because they, for whatever reason, they set up this president where she grows her fist really, really big, and it just looks grotesque on her.
you know,
And you know, because I've seen people draw stretchy female characters I thought were pretty cool, but there's something just kind of uncanny valley, a little bit unnerving, a little grotesque when they do it with Kamala. Like it just looks a little dumb, and I think a lot of people are going like, no teenage girl would ever want those powers because they'd be so self-conscious all the time.
Well, I mean, they did talk about her powers being like a metaphor for teenage awkwardness, which I can kind of get.
I will say that Disney could do it if they wanted to. I mean, for all the stuff that the CW gets about their shows, I thought they pulled off Elongated Man fairly well. You know, I
Well,
like
see,
Elongated Man.
the problem with Kamala is that in Beginning was silly from the jump.
Mm-hmm.
It's silly in 2 dimensions. Okay, now if you want to do Reed's powers, he can do much more. If you want to do Plastic Man can do anything he imagines. But in Beginning,
I mean, and it's
hands big and this whole bunch of things that was silly from the jump.
I mean, it's even a silly word. I thought Kamala, for the most part, reading the comics, I thought she was a more. I know, like for the Disney show, they brought her down. They made her like younger in levels of maturity. Because I really think they wanted to connect with a much younger audience than the comic book audience for Kamala. Because I feel like Kamala in the comics, the original couple runs, was a lot more put together than what we got in the show and what we're getting here. But they would still do like these little kind of dumb cutesy pie things, like calling her power in Beginning. I never saw that as something like the character as I read her would say. It just seemed like just a silly little nonsense word that she made up. And was like, no, she's actually smarter and cooler than that. So that was always kind of a weird choice for me.
Well, see, part 1 of her bad book to screen translation was the idea of what you just said, that if you followed her at all when we first meet her in the books, she's way smarter and way more mature, and she's way more principled. That's kind of the core of her character. That's why she ends up leaving the Avengers, because like all young and idealistic people, real life wasn't what she thought, and she couldn't deal with the fact that all victories come with sacrifice, and she thought that was a compromise of integrity on the Avengers, so she quit and founded the Champions. And I love that original run of the Champions. I love that book. And so that part of her, I understood what she was doing, and it was so contemporary because she used social media to get the message out, and they were always about trending and what was the hashtags.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was right on point. But the whole idea there was that she was so principled as a person. She didn't want to, her heroes disappointed her, and they weren't wrong. She's just naive, but it was a very young idealistic person thing to do. So she just ended up starting her own. They kind of messed up when they added Time Display Cyclops. But anyway, it was still really a fun book, at least at first.
That was the last time I liked Cyclops in the comics, though.
And I don't want to go off on the tangent, but I will say to the Marvel Studios people, it's like if you want to go young and have a younger or very young female character, there you could do early Squirrel Girl, or even better, you could do Moon Girl and Devil's Dinosaur. I mean, that would be a great.
I mean, talk about one that's purpose built right now.
We've
Moon
got
Girl,
Valeria Richards. We've got Power Pack. We've got a lot of young characters like.
Oh man, OG Power Pack.
Nadia Van Dyne.
What'd you say, Steve?
Nadia Van Dyne, the second Wasp.
Yep.
Okay,
she was okay in the Avengers.
So So that was my first reaction to this trailer. I'm like, Nick Fury has to be the hook, but you're trying to attach those Avengers feelings to these characters, and that is not working, at least from the trailer. The next character I want to talk about is Monica Rambeau. Now, she's another one that comic fans have been crying about for a while because she hasn't really gotten her due, because she was actually the first Captain Marvel after Marvel, died, and then she's been through many changes with her powers and her name. But you'd never know that if you're not a comics fan, and you certainly can't tell that from her depictions in the MCU, big and small screens, and mainly the small screen, because of course we covered WandaVision, and what she did at the end of WandaVision was so unbelievably egregious until I'm still not over it personally. I'm like,
oh yeah, and I know we haven't shown it yet, but they play that line in the second trailer.
Do they now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's look at that second trailer, then we'll talk about that.
All right.
There was an idea to bring together a group of remarkable people. The Avengers disbanded after the blip.
They'll never know what you sacrificed for them.
Faster, baby. It's time to assemble the new Avengers for coming threats.
We've been in exile for decades because of Carol Danvers. Now is the time to fight for freedom.
Okay, so our powers are entangled. I can manipulate light energy.
I could totally show you. No! Where's our daughter?
Nick, this may be the biggest danger we face.
Shields up!
You may not be able to win alone, but the three of you will win together.
We're a team.
Oh, no, we're not a team.
We're not a team.
Now, does everybody remember how Monica Rambeau got her powers? I'm talking to our viewing audience. She got her powers because she pushed through Wanda's fake city barrier, and somehow that morphed her cells and gave her these light manipulation powers, which I am still scratching my head at how they did that, because Nick is talking about bringing together extraordinary people. And I'm like, that doesn't make you extraordinary. That's a happy accident. But anyway, so with her line of they'll never know what you gave up for them, for those of you that don't remember the end of WandaVision, Wanda had...
Oh, I remember. I remember.
How could we forget? Wanda had kidnapped an entire town. She enslaved them. She deceived them. She created her own version of the Matrix so she could have her family back, her synthetic husband and her never real kids. And she took them from their families, from their lives, and made them play out this little fantasy of hers. And when it all started to fall apart, they changed the narrative to make it look like Wanda was the victim. And she literally choked them. She was going to kill them. And then Monica Rambeau says that line as the grits hit the pan, everything falls apart. They were like, let us go or kill us. And then the government comes in, and before they can arrest Wanda Maximoff, Monica Rambeau says, they'll never know what you gave up for them. And then Wanda flies off.
And may I add that this is before Wanda got taken over by the evil book, and then decided to go casually murdering a bunch of people in Kamar-Taj, going across the universe, the multiverse, to chase down Miss America, killing people that were in the way, including an alternate Doctor Strange, and and also killing a bunch of people that were alternates of the Illuminati on this one world. She has a body count that is massive now, and it's because Monica did not stop her when she had the chance. That is all on her.
Not only that,
Excellent point.
To all the people who want to defend her because, their family and everything, it's the exact same as saying for somebody who is, for instance, a sadist who likes to kidnap people and torture them, and they decide not to kidnap and torture a whole town, saying they'll never know what you gave up for them, because he doesn't get the joy and delight of being able to kidnap and torture a whole town. They'll never know what you gave up, the joy that you could have had that you gave up for that town so you didn't kidnap and torture them. I mean, that's the kind of statement we're talking about right there.
And now, I've been wanting to say this for a long time. This right here, what I'm going to drop. I've been wanting to say this for a long time, because they do the same thing in the Blue Beetle trailer with that line that Batman's a fascist. Okay. I don't understand this penchant to piss off your audience before they even see the film. I don't understand this idea that seems to be prevalent now, that they want to rile you up, make you mad. Do I think that's going to result? That might result in buzz, but it doesn't necessarily result in butts in seats or ticket sales or whatever it is that you're trying to sell. And so I'm saying that to say that's the kind of taste I had left in my mouth at the end of WandaVision about Monica Rambeau, about this version of her. That's your take on all this? That Wanda tortured these people and you just gonna let her walk away?
When they say things like that, when like Batman's a fascist and that sort of thing, is like, I know they've got a motivation for it because it gets press, it gets eyes on it, but that never translates to butts in the seats, because that audience is a phantom. It is a fragment. It is a number that will never sustain you.
I will say, Steve and I were talking about this before the two of you came on in the backstage.
Mm-hmm.
I can defend that line to a certain extent. It's not that I believe it, and I don't think it was good to be in the trailer, but I think story-wise, I can defend it and why there would be certain people who would feel that way.
I'm purely talking about in terms of what DT was saying, though.
Okay, but I think
like that's putting it in there because, like, I'm sure there are people who think Batman's a fascist.
Well,
he's right. He's the law lets him do whatever he does.
Yeah. I mean, I can believe that there are characters out there in the DC universe who believe that the way Batman, I mean, it was even in the Dark Knight Returns book, where Carrie Kelly's parents are like hippies talking about Batman being a fascist and all that other stuff,
I designed an actual villain for my Blitz comic that was basically that kind of Batman, actually literally taken to that extreme. This was before I found out that the whole thing was a meme later. But, the thing is that Batman is a character that you can twist to the extent that you can interpret him that way. It just doesn't make very much sense in the context of the DC universe.
And I will also say that the jokes at their own expense have been coming fast and furious lately in comic movies. To go back to, and look, I'm a fan of what James Gunn is trying to do, but he started it. Well, he didn't start it, but he did a lot of it in Peacemaker, making fun of, Aquaman.
Oh, he's not the first. It's
constantly, and
it's all coming off of Joss Whedon.
Yeah.
And James and Gunn has a similar kind of sense of humor. It feels like a similar way of like the zippy dialogue, the jokes, the pacing of that sort of the comedic elements. But all these other directors take the wrong lessons from it, and they don't know how to give you the emotional punch. If you look at Joss Whedon's body of work, he's got the jokes in there, but he does not sacrifice the drama for the jokes. Thor doesn't watch his Eternal Kingdom burn to ashes, only to have a joke about a rock stepping on a bug and saying, "I'm sorry," and screwing up that whole moment. Or Doctor Strange's cloak, like basically caressing his face when he's like, I am really Doctor Strange.
Look at the death of Coulson in the original Avengers. I mean, that was dramatically really, really powerful.
Yes,
it wasn't undercut by the joke.
Precisely.
But back to DT's point about Monica Rambeau. I mean, you look at her; she was that little girl in Captain Marvel, and somehow she's grown up to become a cynical, hopeless character who is amoral at the best of times.
Okay, took the words out of my mouth. I'm saying if this is the narrative we're pushing, and that's her moral compass, it's not even more fine-tuned than that, then why do I want to root for her? This seems to be another element.
I can't root for her because her whole time on WandaVision, she was rooting for Wanda, and I was on the side of the guy that they promoted as the villain because I was like, yeah, they need to take her out. This colonel or general or whatever it was, he's right. They need to take her out because she has terroristically taken 3,000 Americans hostage and is torturing them to live out her little fantasy with her fake children. I don't care what universe she goes to in Multiverse of Madness. Those kids are still fake. They're figments of your imagination, Wanda.
And I also don't understand how we got from Dark Phoenix to here. Because when Jean went dark, she consumed the sun, consumed the planet, and Lilandra said, okay, Jean Grey must die. I mean, you can't just walk around, and we knew the Phoenix Force was going to come to this point and blah, 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 blah. all of which
She
made
caused the
all
planet to go
moral sense in the
supernova. I mean,
world.
you can't go back from that.
Right, made all the moral sense in the world. So Jean herself had to agree with it and commit, how to kitty, how to kitty in the end. But with Wanda, she does the same thing. Maybe not the same body count, but she does the same thing across multiverses, and people are rooting for her. And I don't understand how you fit both of those ideas in the same frame, because they're the same idea. You got hurt, you went dark, you went bad, people died because of you. So Jean has to pay, and Wanda gets supported, understanding.
For some reason, you fast forward however many years it's been, and suddenly anything to do with a female character that enough people like, even if they do something evil, it's you go girl, and that's what it is. And it's like, no, female characters could be evil and bad and deserving of their fate just as much as a male character can.
Which is such a shame, because initially I thought Kamala Khan in the comics was pretty enjoyable. I was into it, and then they started doing things like having her back Miss Marvel, who want to talk about somebody becoming a fascist. She's using this future seeing mutant to lock people down. It's pre-crime. It's Minority Report. She's doing that. And then Kamala even locks up one of her best friends in this government concentration camp because he's not down with that. So the formerly super moralistic character loses out her morals to be part of the A team.
Okay,
and then that never gets properly addressed. And they write her friend off because he's got this huge crush on Kamala. He simps. He's like, oh, I got really hurt. I'm crippled for life, but I'm still your friend. But she did that to you.
Just a quick point on the trailer that I saw too is that, we have three characters in here. One is still got that sense of wanting to be a hero, but she's, young for me, but I could live with that. Then Captain Rambeau is completely hopeless.
What was that? We lost your sound, Nim.
No, your Mission Impossible tape cut in, but we can hear you.
I mean, because Brie Larson, her Captain Marvel is still coming across just like Captain Marvel from the former MCU. Still nothing new.
Okay.
And for Monica Rambeau, I think I'm in Nim's camp. I'm not really getting anything from her. I have no interest in her. There's nothing in the trailer, even if I hadn't seen WandaVision.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing in the trailer that interests me about her. At least Kamala has this personality I was able to latch on to.
Well, I read something that said comic book movies can no longer be average, and that's what most of them are average or below average, because they're not giving us anything new. And I'm still trying to look at it through the eyes of normies. That's why Shazam 2 failed for other reasons, and that is that it didn't really introduce anything new. It's formulaic, really, and it was using a gimmick that was old after the first movie. But that's a good transition to jump into Captain Marvel and Brie Larson's version of Carol Danvers, because the thing about her is she's still attitudey. There's nothing warm about her. But I mean, Carol Danvers has been the character they've tried to force down our throats and push on us for the last several years. And her book has been rebooted more times than we can count. And Carol Danvers was best when she was.
I stopped counting after the 7th reboot.
Well, she was Ms. Marvel with the navy blue bathing suit with the long boots and the yellow streak. And when she was that version of Ms. Marvel, that was and then they fooled around and let her, and y'all not gonna believe this, they let her get, I can't use the word, but I'll mess up the stream. They let her get raped by a son she had. And then
that was the worst story.
Yeah, the infamous Avengers 100, I think it was.
If we had to explain that whole storyline to you, remember on Star Trek TNG where Deanna gave birth to a son and he grew up in a day? Well, it was like that, except they hooked up and then she fell in love with this dude.
I was so glad when Chris Claremont addressed that in the X-Men.
And we were all stunned, like, what? So when she comes back, she says, why did you let that happen to me or whatever? But at the time, she was in love. And she
I
was
know, like
leaving
they had to explain away that dude had a level of mind control that just put the whammy on everybody.
Right. And she was leaving her own free will, and she was riding off in the sunset with a new life and a new love. And that's what they tried to sell us on the downfall of that character, her exit as we understood on that level. But when they kept reinventing her, every time they made Carol Danvers into somebody new, she wasn't more interesting. And every time they gave her a new book, whatever, she wasn't more interesting. And so I'm saying that to say that a Brie Larson's version is also falling flat in the sense of I don't see a hook. I don't see
Can you
her
use that,
being
him?
the linchpin. I don't see
Yeah.
her being the linchpin. This is a lot like Batman versus Superman. They didn't believe in Man of Steel, or Man of Steel didn't do, it did well at the box office. It made money, but it was so controversial. They didn't want us just to see it. They wanted us to love it.
Yeah.
So DC's response to anything that they think isn't working is just add Batman. So that's why we got Batman versus Superman instead of Man of Steel 2, which we are never going to get for those that wanted it.
It's funny you say that because the Marvel equivalent of that is just add Spider-Man, which
That's
is what
right.
we got with the death of Kamala Khan when those two characters hardly interacted at all.
What I was
They
gonna
have no reason to hang out together, not at all.
what I was gonna say before my hardware went crazy again. Yeah, what you were saying about Brie Larson's Captain Marvel is absolutely true. And then you have the three characters in here, and Captain Rambeau is who she is. Monica Rambeau and Kamala Khan is fine, but Brie Larson, that one bit in that second trailer, she's not only unlikable, she's petulant at one point. They're doing these switches back and forth, and she throws a temper tantrum, hissy fit, jumping up and down. This is the superhero leader that we all need and want.
And also it's like, why is Kamala worshiping this woman? What is there
I don't
about
know.
her that she would find admirable?
Not to mention,
especially in the context of the MCU, because
she's never on Earth.
She's never on Earth. How does she get all this hero worship accolades when she got punched out of the movie by Thanos? We never, all of her exploits are off in space that they shouldn't be public knowledge. And to go to your point, DT, is like, why is she even back? We keep asking, where's Captain Marvel? What's she doing? We don't know. She's saving the rest of the universe somehow. And it sounds like, once again, with this movie, they're doing what they're doing with Secret Invasion, because we can't just have villains. Nobody can just be a bad guy. Even Thanos, who in the comics is a nihilistic worshiper of death,
Yes.
we've got to give him some sort of relatable characteristic. A bad guy just can't be a bad guy. And it's okay to have a bad guy who can be a bit more one-dimensional. The fascinating thing about Thanos in the comics with his nihilistic approach is he's actually really freaking intelligent, and he gets into these interesting metaphysical discussions about things. It's not about how to save the resources of the universe. That's what makes him a fascinating character.
Kind of evolves. He evolves over time.
He does.
And he turns into more of a hardcore survivalist.
But what do we have?
Which for him is really weird.
But what do we have going on here? We hear the same thing here that we have in Secret Invasion. You promised us a plan. So, it's your fault that we're invading. And now it's Captain Marvel has kept us oppressed for years out in space. So now that she's, I guess, gallivanting on Earth, we're going to come back and claim our place. So, once again, we get the unnecessarily sympathetic villain. And it makes me so appreciative of movies like John Wick, where the villains can just be freaking villains. And I am looking forward to John Wick putting several bullets in their face by the end of it.
Yes, and see the blasé nature with which both Nick Fury and Carol Danvers seem to approach the Skrull situation that they created.
Mm-hmm.
This was Khan's argument against Kirk, but this time it's real.
Yeah.
Khan's argument against Kirk was that you didn't care anything about us or the crew of the Botany Bay, and you dropped us off on this planet, and then the orbit shifted, and we've suffered because we were just an afterthought to you. So Khan had a point.
Yeah, the Federation didn't check on us in 40 years. This is what's been going on.
That's right. The Skrulls have even more of a point.
Mm-hmm.
They have even more of a point because you can't make these big promises to an entire race and species of people and then just be like, oh, well, too bad, so sad for you. I guess you'll have to get used to your new life. And both of them are much too blasé for me. But I'm saying, again, I'm just trying, other than Iman Vellani's quips, I'm trying to find a reason to root for any of the three of you, or a reason that instead of, if Captain Marvel 1, the original movie, was such a banger, people keep saying it made $1 billion, and they keep trying to act like it made $1 billion on its own merits. It made $1 billion because they sandwiched it before the biggest superhero movie event of all time.
Yeah.
Number one. Number
Right.
two, I want everybody to remember that Rotten Tomatoes wrecked its website. It was the Captain Marvel movie where Rotten Tomatoes decided you couldn't criticize it.
Mm-hmm.
So they started blocking all negative views. They started artificial.
Well, they started doing that back with the Star Wars reboot, which is where they lost all credibility. So I've never trusted them since then. But
But
this
I mean,
got really egregious because Disney pushed this as the film you had to see to connect the
The
two
Avengers.
parts of the end game, to
And you
the
didn't.
other movie. But you didn't need to see it at all.
Right. But I'm saying that what they did, what Rotten Tomatoes did, was the final funeral pyre for whatever they used to be,
Yeah.
with the way they've been over backward to say that Captain Marvel was a success. And I'm saying, just like anything else, if it's all that, where's the sequel? Okay. So we never got a Man of Steel 2, and we never will for those that want it, because I want Henry Cavill back, but I didn't need to see another Snyder thing. And we're never going to get a follow-up to Captain Marvel because now it's the Marvels. And then
That's what this movie is.
Brie Larson
That's
was
what
doing
this-
damage control, saying, well, I always knew the sequel was going to be a team movie and whatnot. I'm like, whatever. Because nobody else did that. How many
Nobody
movies
wanted
did- how many
Captain Marvel
movies
on
did-
her own. Nobody wanted Miss Marvel on her own. It was the lowest rated Disney Plus show. And nobody wanted Captain Rambo on her own. So they all stuck them together and made them a team. And see,
Hearing you
that was
guys, hearing you guys talk about the sympathetic villain, though, I have to cringe thinking what they would do with an Ord of Breakworld show. So I don't even know what they would do with that. So because if anybody had a reason to be upset, it was probably him, and he's not a sympathetic character. So
we all, well, I won't say we all.
I mean, the only completely unsympathetic character I can think of has been the Red Skull, because you can always count on a Nazi for everybody to hate unequivocally.
So that movie slot, the first Captain Marvel movie, should have been the Black Widow movie. Okay? And everybody knows that, especially with what ends up happening to Natasha. We needed a last hurrah. We needed her background story. We needed to see her in action.
Yeah.
We needed to see Budapest. We needed a lot of things that her eventual movie didn't get.
And that movie perfectly segues between, Infinity War and Endgame.
That's right.
That's the movie that should have been there.
Should have been there, and that movie definitely could have done well on its own merits besides its positioning. So, but they didn't do that. And so Thor got 4 movies, Iron Man got 3 movies, Captain America got, Civil War is actually Avengers 3. So that's kind of a combination sequel thing. So I'm not trying to hear this noise that it was so successful that we couldn't give her a second one. Y'all made that up. So once the villain is revealed here, they've already revealed that Captain Marvel is kind of the villain, the same way Nick Fury is kind of the villain. And Nick Fury, we give leeway to, because Nick Fury is not a hero. He's a spy. And I don't know why people keep forgetting that. When he's written well, you don't know what he's doing. He could be playing all sides against the middle. He's got resources you don't know about. He's got angles you haven't thought of, because he's a spy.
He is proactively ruthless.
in the comics, nobody likes or trusts Nick Fury anyway. So
Yeah, and I think you especially notice this when Nick Fury is opposite Captain America. I mean, that guy's a real hero, and he's often called out Nick Fury when he's done stuff that was shady.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. That's right.
But being a spy is way different than being a soldier, and they've always addressed that between those two characters.
Very well. Winter Soldier does it very well with every scene that they have. And Fury is calling out Cap about the things they had to do during World War II. And Cap was right. Yeah, we compromised with that. So that was so people could be free. And he's like, this here, this Project Insight, that's not freedom. That's fear. And so the moral lines and the values, that's where always the meat of a story is what do the characters care about? What's driving them? Why do they do what they do? And then when that's juxtaposed against values that don't line up, that's what makes for the drama and the conflict. So if you get that, you can write a good story. And like I said, this trailer should have had, or those trailers should have had more of that, I think. But, you know, everything's got to be more snark.
Well, you know, another thing that bugs me about this is if you look at all of the first 10 years of Marvel movies, going into each film, even when it's a big cast film like the Avengers, you know who the villain is. Like the best trailer, I think, as far as introing a villain has been Ultron's, like, you know, I have no strings. Like that's just really set the tone. Is like creepy, and you feared Ultron, you know, and they had been building up Thanos. But even when you see villains like Killmonger and some of the others that come to play, you get it. But I know nothing about this woman. I don't even know her name. We don't even have a name for the threat. You know, so it's like, you know, generic villain number 47.
Now, did I hear you say that they're building up Carol Danvers as a villain?
No. I said you built up Thanos. Like, so we.
No. I mean,
a better.
No. But I was talking about how we've been trapped in this dimension because of Carol Danvers.
Yeah.
So they're blaming her, and they're going to come out there.
If they want to build up Carol Danvers as the ultimate villain of the Marvels, I'm fine with that, because as far as I'm concerned, Carol Danvers hasn't been a hero since she was Miss Marvel. So, you know.
And Captain Rambo isn't much of a hero either. I mean,
so
that's what I'm saying. And Ms. Marvel is just trying to be Chloe Sullivan with superpowers.
So if they want to pull a whole switcheroo with Carol Danvers that way, hell, I'll root for her, man. I might give my money. So.
And the perceived arrogance of like saying like, oh, she's taking care of the whole universe. Well, you had all those decades to stop Thanos, and you demonstrated that you're more powerful than him without the Infinity Gauntlet, but you never stopped this guy who's killing half a planet at a time. So why do I believe anything you say?
That's been the problem with Captain Marvel since they told us she was coming. She is shoehorned in. She was shoehorned in to ride the wave of the Avengers popularity, but making her that powerful and being around for that long makes no sense given the story that they told. And that still hasn't been resolved in at least not any content that I've seen. And
they're still complaining about the Eternals having been shoehorned in the same way,
the exact same way.
And he is an Eternal,
right? So that's what I'm saying. You get to the point where I shouldn't have to explain this stuff when they don't understand the point of canon. That's not an angry fanboy, you know, talking point, even though they keep saying that it is. It's cohesion for your story world.
Well, the other thing is that Marvel keeps throwing stuff against the wall to see what sticks, and they're leaving all this stuff hanging out there, whether you like it or not. I mean, you've done some major earth-shattering things, or earth-shattering from a fan standpoint, and yet they've done nothing with them. So you have the Eternals. What's going on with that? We've never seen those characters again. You have a brand new Black Widow. Never seen or heard from her again. Don't know what's going on with her.
No, she was on. Wasn't she on Hawkeye?
Well, I didn't watch Hawkeye, so there you go.
Yeah, we've got like an island-sized head and hand coming out of the sea.
Yeah,
and nobody ever talks about that in the news.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Julia Louis-Dreyfus is popping up here and there. Whatever her, you know. She's supposed to be Madam Hydra, I guess, eventually, or something. I don't know what's going on with that. So Hydra may be coming back, but you'd think they'd be doing more of that stuff going on. I don't know. There's just all sorts of stuff.
Who the hell knows who might be a Skrull, you know?
Yeah, and this is why canon's important, because if you don't have canon, then nothing in the story matters, because it can change from show to show. I remember there was a time in Marvel, you know, I think it's pretty much after they got rid of Big Jim Shooter. Because he ran a very tight ship, and a lot of people hated him because he made them work. He made them turn in their work on time. He made them change things that weren't consistent within the lore, the canon of the Marvel universe. And then come the 90s, Marvel starts to fall off, and they start to have some bad practices because they just it was kind of an editorial free-for-all, which is like it is today. And so nothing has to jive And like people are overwriting each other's stories because there's no communication. And so if Kevin Feige is not doing his job as the overall lore master of the MCU, then it all falls apart. Nothing matters because somebody can retcon this, whether on purpose or accidentally. And like, what does it matter then? You know, like if this doesn't stick, if this thing that I saw that I paid my $7 in the theater to go see, or I paid my Disney Plus subscription to watch, and it doesn't stick, if it doesn't have any meaningful impact, it's like, oh, you know, this big thing happened. There's a giant head and hand of a celestial coming out of the ocean. But you know what? Nobody's ever going to talk about that. They're not going to talk about these weird godlike race of super beings who we just discovered are on the planet. Like, that movie didn't sell so well, so we're just going to quietly ignore that it ever happened.
You know, it's stuck in my head now. Now you know two-hand jive, baby.
I can get very handsy when I talk.
So what Bracey said was on point. And they're not going to top Agents of S.H.I.E.L.'s Madam Hydra, number one. Number two, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is a redheaded stepchild cousin that we don't talk about. I don't know why they hate that show, because that show was really, really good. It had such a
was good
built-in audience, and aside from Colton, they never give props to, you know, the agents, and they should have. And they had some serious Marvel villains on there as well as some great stories.
Absorbing Man, Mr. Hyde, you know, Deathlock was on there.
That's
a whole
right.
bunch of things.
That's right. And if I was, once again, put on a writer's hat, if I was making this trailer for the Marvels, you know who I'd have show up more prominently and be a part of the story is the Nova Corps. There's no way you should be telling this kind of story without the Nova Corps, good grief. And so, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched Secret Invasion, they're trying to make Super Skrulls.
Yeah.
But instead of using the DNA of the Fantastic Four, they're using the DNA of the Avengers. At least that's their goal.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, so it's like you have all these perfect setups for the stories we really want to see, but it's like we never see them. Like we have no chance of getting these resolutions. And I'm like, why? And it's because of a lack of respect for canon. And once again, it's not some type of subjective talking point that longtime comics fans or angry fanboys, you know, whenever I hear that phrase, now in my head, it sounds like Friday out of touch humor. It sounds like the Bud Light vice president. You know, just always a brand of Friday, you know, Friday out of, that's what I hear when I hear angry fanboys now.
Especially a villain like the Super Skrull, whose origin is so intrinsically tied into the Fantastic Four, and to tie him into the Avengers, you know, it's just like, I understood why they did Stark creating Ultron. I mean, I got it, but that's another villain who was tied 100% to Hank Pym in a foundational sort of way, and I really missed that they didn't do something with that.
And for those that don't know the backstory there, because I'm always trying to be sensitive to our non-comics readers and viewers, Hank Pym is the one that created Ultron. He created most of the stuff that Tony Stark gets the credit for in the MCU. Hank Pym got canceled because of a domestic violence panel against his wife. He lost his temper and slapped her, and that got him canceled. So I was surprised to see him in Ant-Man at all. But now he's never going to get the credit for being Goliath and Yellow Jacket and Ant-Man and the Pym particles and Ultron's creation. He's like Illuminati level, like Reed and Tony and Doom and Namor and T'Challa and Black Bolt. Hank Pym is on that level, but now non-comics readers are never going to know that because he did get canceled because of his domestic violence. So he's never going to get his propers in the MCU on the big or small screen. He just won't. You have to be a comics fan to know all that.
They also killed any possibility of ever doing anything with Hank Pym when they decided to go with Scott Lang and make Hank Pym Michael Douglas, who is 3,287 years old. So,
So, no chance of integrating that unless we do retro stories. I didn't understand the casting of
Multiverse to the rescue again.
Michelle Pfeiffer as Janet Van Dyne. I didn't get that either. But anyway, so let me segue before we wrap up into this last thing, and that is everything that's been going on in the comics with Kamala Khan. Because for those of you, again, that may or may not know, for the 5 of you that watched her show,
She was identified as a mutant on that show. And as soon as we saw that, we knew what that meant. And then just 2 months ago, almost to the day, she was killed in the comics and died in the arms of Peter Parker. And they've never had that kind of relationship. If Johnny Storm had done that, or even Felicia Hardy, if that had been her death scene, that would have been legitimized.
I mean, really, it should have been her and Miles Morales if you wanted to stick a
Yeah.
Spider-Man in there.
That's
the
correct.
relationship.
That's correct. She should have been surrounded by the champions.
Since we're
Not-
speaking of comics, though, I'm sorry, DT, I interrupted you. So
Since we're talking about that and that kind of thing, remember that we heard the X-Men theme on her show, and we were like, oh, Lord. So 2 months ago, almost to the day, they killed her in Peter's arms. And the biggest travesty on that cover is not her dead. It's Mary Jane in the arms of her boyfriend, Paul. I'm still not over it. I did a whole video on that. That was a whole rant room by itself.
Don't get me started on Spider-Man.
Right. Yeah, no, we could do a whole nother pod on that. But we knew what that meant. That meant she's going to be back. She's going to be back quickly, because how you going to release a movie with her in it, and she did in the comics, and she's going to come back as a mutant. So what that means is
To be fair, they did kill off all the Avengers at the height of their comic book popularity with the movies going on. I got to go to the comic store and read about Thor. Like, who's this girl with Thor's hammer?
Since
The
we're
whole
going
thing
into
with the Inhumans and the mutants is so weird. It's like at one point, like a few years back, it was just like they were turning all the mutants into Inhumans, or they were trying to diminish the mutants to prop up the Inhumans because they didn't have the rights to them. And then once they got the rights to the X-Men back, it's like, okay, screw the Inhumans. Let's make everybody.
Well, here's the weird
that
thing:
was-
is like Marvel has a history of this petty vindictiveness. So they're like, all right, we're gonna kill off Wolverine because Fox is doing these Wolverine movies. Like, it doesn't matter that Fox is making money off the Wolverine movies. You don't make money off the Wolverine movies whether or not Fox makes a Wolverine movie or not. You're cutting off your nose to spite your face, and it's the no more mutants. We get rid of the mutants. We do all this stuff, and it doesn't matter. You're only hurting your own comic book sales when you did that. So all of those decisions were dumb. I would have kept Kamala Khan an Inhuman, and I would have built that up some more.
The big push was on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to establish the Inhumans as the new mutant concept on the screen. And then they launched an Inhumans show, which they did something funny by. The opening thing was actually a movie, and then they were going into a TV show. That thing was so poorly conceived and written and cast and directed, and they shaved Medusa's head, and everybody's like,
and
what?
not only that, like that was I'm sorry, but TV was the wrong vehicle for that particular group of super people.
See,
If you're going to do TV, you got the TV budget, you need to go lower key. You can't do big flashy powers on TV. You don't have the budget. You're not going to be able to do anything satisfying for people of that level of power.
I'm old enough to remember when Marvel Comics, the actual comics, made an executive decision to stop publishing X-Men comics and push the Inhumans because of what was going on behind the scenes with them having the rights. And we had no X-Men comics for at least a year. It might have been longer than a year. Until Marv Hickman convinced them to do X-Men again because people were so upset.
I was going to say, they're just petty. It's remarkable how petty they can
And they were pushing out the Fantastic Four for the same reason.
Yeah,
Same
and then
reason.
The instant that they got the rights back, they turned switch course 180 degrees, shelved the Inhumans. You can't find Inhumans in comics anymore, in print anymore. They don't exist.
Yeah.
And now they're erasing them from this. So it's like everyone loves to talk about how DC is rudderless and doing these things back and forth. Well, Marvel's just as bad. And they're
What really gets me is the way that instead of the comics informing the movies, they have the movies inform the comics, and then they turn the comics into this bastardized version of the MCU, and diluting what made the comics so interesting. And so they're kind of ruining both at once. And this is why I don't like it when they screw up the canon in these movies is because then what ends up happening is you get a situation like what's happened with Kamala, what's happening with the Thunderbolts, where they're using the lineup from the movie in the Thunderbolts comics, where they just make everything worse because they're going off of what they're putting on the film, and what they're putting on the film is not reflective of what the comics originally were.
Not only
I
that,
love the OG
we were
Thunderbolts.
talking about canon and everything. If you start making in the comics, you start making Inhumans X-Men, and then you start trying to retcon that, you are breaking things like the High Evolutionary. How the hell does that fit in anymore?
So
he's already broke. They've already broke him and Kang. He's more broke than Batman's back over Bane's knee.
I think it was Jason Munier, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, on Twitter, who said, let me just get this straight. Kamala's a mutant and Wanda is not. And I think that summed it all up.
Thank you.
So what they're going to do, but see, everybody called this at once.
Yeah.
That's how badly telegraphed this move was. What they're going to do is they're going to make Kamala the reason the X-Men form. So either she's going to replace Charles, or she's going to find them, or she's going to suggest the idea, or they're going to build a team around her, or she's going to find the X-Men on Krakoa and tell them to get me involved. It's going to be about her.
Well, I can't wait to lamely see how she magically becomes a mutant, because she's going to pop out of one of those Krakoa pods.
Which means she's a plant clone.
Yeah, she's a plant clone, so she's not even the real Kamala. There's no more real X-Men. There's no real Tony Stark. There's no real Rhodey. Those people have all been killed. The real Steve Rogers is now a criminal in the Raft or something. So all the people we actually like are dead or have been replaced permanently. The only good thing I can say about the Kamala, I actually kind of dig the costume. It references the X-Men and it still pays homage to her original costume. It's actually a pretty good design for a X-Men outfit design.
Yeah, but there's one cover that's imitating the Phoenix cover when Jean first becomes Phoenix.
Oh, well, we can count on Kamala becoming Phoenix.
And the thing of it is, it's like the X-Men have like a million characters like Kamala already. Starting with Kitty Pryde and then Pixie and Armor, all these other female sidekicks that Wolverine has had for years, and she's basically filled the role that they're trying to plug Kamala.
Well, in the trailer that DT put up for us to watch for the comic book event of her coming to the X-Men, they even grab an old title. Welcome to the X-Men, Kamala. Hope you survive the experience.
Well,
that's right.
Plus, they've also done X-Men with her background before, and they were much more interesting. Like Sand is an awesome character in the X-Men.
Dust.
Dust. That's right. Dust.
Remember how it so reminded me of when they did Black Panther, they kind of did the same, oh, Kamala Khan, she's the first Muslim character. Like, no, guys, there was Dust. There was the Arabian Night. There was a number of Muslim characters before Kamala. It's like Black Panther is the first black superheroes. Like, did you guys forget about Spawn and Blade in the 90s? If you want to even go funny about it, you got Meteor Man and Black Man. We've had a few black superheroes recently before all this popped off.
That's right. And so she's going to become the girl that's the key to everything, and she's going to become the center of the mutant world. And we all see it coming, and we're all eye-rolling and groaning in kind of a pre-disgusted fashion, because we know that that's not going to work out, and it's not going to make us care. They keep trying to push her. It's not going to make us care. It's not going to make her more important. It's a really kind of a Carol Danvers on lather, rinse, repeat. You keep trying to push the character and make us love her, and no.
And the sad part is the actress and the character don't deserve the backlash that is going to come their way.
I got no hard feelings for this gal.
It's Disney corporate stuff, because they think, these characters have the name Marvel in it. They should be the face of the Marvel universe.
That should have been
that's not how it works.
That should have been one of your earliest Marvel superheroes way back in the day. I can't believe nobody thought about that until the comics for Shazam came out. Captain Marvel. Oh crap! Quick, trademark that name. Holy, we've got to make a Captain Marvel right now.
So now that thing that Nim just said is interesting, and we'll close on this thought.
I do want to say one more thing about the comics, if you don't.
Okay, go ahead, and then I'll give my thought.
I will say this about her name is Iman
Vellani.
Iman Vellani. All the interviews I've seen, she is just such a little sweetheart. She is so pleasant, so nice, so sincere, and like you said, a very obvious fan of this. And she's no writer, so I know there's people catching her, and that's the gimmicks. Like, oh, we're gonna have her, and she even says it herself. It's like, I'm getting to write fan fiction of this character because she knows she's not a writer. So there's gonna be a bunch of people in there coaching the crap out of her to help her get through this sort of thing. But that's
okay. Now
I feel for her because I worry that she's gonna get dumped on, and it's not her fault. If the comic just sucks.
Okay, now that's a good transition. That's what I want to say, and then we're going to wrap up. That was basically my last point. But I also want to say everybody's going to have to understand that they're breaking Kamala's character to make her a mutant in the first X-Men, because Kamala's character was an Avengers fangirl living in it. That was her whole through line. That was her whole motivation. That's the reason she formed the Champions, because she wanted a better version, a younger version, a more honest version of the Avengers, if you will. But that's always who she's been. And Iman Vellani in real life is a Marvel fangirl. She keeps proving with her knowledge of the characters.
Yeah.
But it's that last thing that both Nims and Jeff said. I heard somebody else say this, and like I said, I'm going to say this and we'll be done. Here's the thing. It's entirely possible that we need to reconsider the possibility of Jake Lloyd's or Edward Furlong's. Because what's going to happen to that little girl is the venom for the people that don't like her or don't agree with her take, or just don't. The venom, that little, she don't deserve that. And at that time in your life, when you're insecure and trying to get comfortable in your own skin and transition from being a little kid to being a young adult and all that, is a very crucial time. And what's going to happen now is the people that don't like her or don't like the character or whatever, we no longer have a wall between I don't like this fiction, I don't like this character, I don't like this development, and I don't like you as the writer or the actor or whatever. And I'm like, and we saw what it did to Jake Lloyd. It just blessed near destroyed him. And I'm like, you did not deserve that, dude. You just didn't. You were a kid. You were saying lines that were written for you. And
right. Same thing for the guy who played Jar Jar.
Yeah.
Right. Who became suicidal. Ahmed Best became suicidal. So he got a bit of redemption in Obi-Wan. But just the idea that he would think to end his life because of people's reaction to a goofy character that he didn't write. But like I said, also Edward Furlong, just some young people injected into this machine. It has a negative impact on them. And this is the last child or young person, I don't know how old she is, I would ever want to see that happen to, precisely because she's so bubbly, because she's so optimistic, and because she so loves the comics and the characters.
Well, not only that, she's a genuine comic fan. And the last thing you need to do is alienate and jade a comics fan into hating the comics, So
right.
Any comics fan.
I would really hate to see her become bitter and cynical because of fan
there's
backlash.
A wave of venom that's coming at her. We know it's coming at her. It's going to be at her on Twitter. If there's no other platform that's going to win.
X.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I forgot.
Well, it works because she's going to be an X-Man.
Yeah.
We are now on Platform X, and now we're sending Zeets, Yeets, Zitters. So, and the birds are dead. So, yeah, that is my only hope, the hope of my heart, because, again, she's the last person I would ever want to have to go through that, because she doesn't deserve it. She doesn't need that at this time in her life.
My advice: stay off social media for a year or two.
Yeah.
Wait for the heat to die down.
All right, that's it, guys. We're gonna call it there. But really enjoyed this pod. I really am glad we got a chance to talk about this, because this is really going to springboard all the stuff we talked about tonight. We're going to see manifesting in the next year.
Cool.
And so we're going to see how that's going to play out. But I hope it plays out well, especially for Iman in particular, because the other actors are grown women.
Yeah.
You know, Elizabeth Olsen got off of
all right,
social media.
Lucas.
So Elizabeth Olsen left social media because she couldn't take it. And, you know, Brie Larson's always been combative and a whole bunch of stuff. But this is a kid, man. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, final thoughts, and then we're out. Nims.
Yeah, I just, you know, I think this is the movie that's being made, but not the movie we deserve. So, you know, and hopefully I'm proved wrong. Maybe I will be. We'll see.
Steve.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a movie that I have any interest in seeing. I mean, hopefully it'll be better than it's been advertised. I see no real reason to be particularly optimistic, or that, you know, Disney's going to learn any of their lessons either with this or with Star Wars. So, unfortunately, it is what it is.
What's your catchphrase, Steve? Harley, don't learn nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Disney don't learn nothing. So,
Bracy, final thought.
You know, there was a time during the golden age of superhero movies that I'm glad I lived long enough to see happen. And, you know, there was a while when all of these were must-see films for me. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, I'll catch it when it's free. You know, I'm not going to the theater for it, even though I am interested enough to see it just because of the young lady, because I find her more engaging here than in the TV show, just because the TV show didn't really give her any stakes or any consequences or anywhere to go. I think she's going to be a lot more interesting here, where she gets to play off the adults and be that fish out of water. And I think she's got somewhere to go as an actress with this. So I want to check that out.
Cool. All right. Thanks to everybody that joined us live. Thanks to everybody that's going to watch the replay. We always love to do these pods, and leave us some comments however you're watching this. If you're watching this on Twitter, if you're watching it on YouTube, whatever channel, don't forget to check out our other programs for Comic Crusaders and United Capes Podcast Network, because we literally have something for everybody. Retro, horror artists, up-and-coming artists, fellow Twitter, Power X users. So we definitely have something for you.
Click like and subscribe down below too. So
like, subscribe, and share.
Yes.
All right. Leave us some comments, and we will all see you next time on the next episode of Sloppy Spoilers.
See you, everyone.